Buenos dias.
Buenos días.
¿Cómo está?
Muy bien, good day.
It is an honor and a privilege to introduce our friend and fellow Rotarian, Pascual Goicechea, as the program today. My happy dollar was something I did learn new about him, but his grandfather was the Cuban ambassador to the Tsar in St. Petersburg, Russia. And it's fascinating history here, but Pascual's retired colonel, U.S. Army, served in special ops in Central and South America, and has been in Clayton a number of years and a Rotarian a number of years. But let's all
My old man was my best friend, and I miss him dearly. He's almost 10 years gone, 20 years gone, I should say. And I still, every now and then, I was so close to him that you still have the urge to want to ask him a question in those moments that you have a question. And I'd like to pick up the phone and call the old man, and then you realize that he checked out. He actually checked out of my arms. 22 November 1998 at 3 o'clock in the morning. I know that sounds kind of morbid. Probably the most beautiful experience in my entire life, to have your best friend pass away in that form. Ironically, it was 39 years to the date that we fled Cuba, 22 November 1959. President Kennedy was murdered 22 November 1963. Just a profile in the timeline there. The presentation I have today, I'll be brief, be quick, and be gone, hopefully, so that those that got to be somewhere else, please feel free to go. Nobody feel bad. But I'll try to tailor it time-wise so that I can satisfy a question and answer period. But before I go any further, I mean, it's a delight to be here. Delight to be here in front of you, friends. And if the presentation is enjoyable, it's not because of me, it's because of the folks whom one surrounds themselves with. And I can begin with Stuart, who was kind enough to ask me to do this. Certainly Terry and Ian for putting together a bunch of stuff that I had in a way that I certainly couldn't have. And likely printing for the perseverance and taking copies, my copies, and putting them together and doing likewise with that. The items here on the table, if you have time, I can leave it up after a while. Right here specifically is a bunch of old papers. And those old papers, after the old man fled, and I say that affectionately, the old man, when he fled, when we all fled Cuba, he snuck back into Cuba 6 months later with a fake Cuban passport, fake stamps. This was obviously before the day of x-rays and what have you. He apparently had had some training in some of these things throughout his life, but the official looking circles here that appear here are circles done with Joy soap tops, in which you would dunk them and put here, and he would certify that so-and-so official had seen it. So he snuck back in. It was still, Eisenhower was still in. You could still do that because Cuba had not shut their doors down. And you could go back, if you had left on a tourist visa, you could come back one more time to do business or conduct business, and that was the excuse that he lives there, merchant. So he went in and came back out with enough money, snuck out to survive for another 6 months to a year while he established what we established ourselves in Texas. But anyway, that's a good picture, huh? You remember some years back, 4 or 5 years ago, you guys asked, we had a little thing going, said, where were you born? And somebody asked me, and I said, well, I was born at a little farm in Iowa. And it was. You didn't believe me. But, see, I owe this to you two. I was born specifically in Cuba, in the island of Cuba, 87 miles south of Key West, Florida. Columbus discovered Cuba 1492, on or around this area, as he hopped from the Bahamas and stumbled in here, fell in love with the place, and the Spaniards basically took it over for the next nearly 400 years. The initial capital of Cuba was here in Santiago. Guantanamo Bay is here, so is Santiago. And Santiago was the initial capital of Cuba till about the late 1500s, early 1600s, at which time the Spaniards, getting all the gold and everything from Central and South America, they needed a better route through the Gulf Stream, and that's where they settled here in Havana. So they made Havana their capital. Santiago fell back to a small little town. Havana lended itself to its deep port, good defensible position, a lot better than Santiago. Spanish rule prevailed till 1898, and in 1898, battleship Maine blew up in Havana. How it blew up is still a matter of discussion. The war ensued. America stepped in. They won. And from 1898 to 1902, Cuba was under the administration of the United States. Puerto Rico, to this day, remains under that administration. So does Guam. The Philippines, up until the time that MacArthur, I think, took care of that. In the context of things, in 1952, I was 4 years old. In 1952, the Republic was only 50 years old. Like any republic in the early stages, everybody was having a contest who was going to be in charge, and there were growing pains. But by and large, it was the most prosperous republic next to Canada, the United States, Mexico, and or Argentina, in that order. This is not my data, this is UN data, consistently from 1953 to 1959. Cuba was the second and third highest per capita in the hemisphere. Again, this is all UN data. Surpassed only by the United States. Its gross national product was greater than that of Spain and Portugal at the time. Its industry included mining, fishery, tourism, banking, manufacturing, retail, railroads, shipping, agriculture, oil and gas. The early discoveries of oil and gas in this central area right in through here. That's a quick thumb, quick and dirty. Specifically, look at that. This kid looks like a German kid, doesn't he? All right, this is really specifically where I was born. Now, this briefing is not classified. But I can tell you, there are SAM-3 sites and SAM-7 sites, and our aircraft sites over here, heavy oil down and through here, transportation nodes, motor nodes in through here, and Army barracks here. But who's paying attention to that? Havana, the old capital, when it was set up, Morro Castle, the ones we'll see pictures of later. Morro Castle, this is the iconic castle that you see at the entrance to Havana, built by the Spaniards there with a little sub-fort right over here to prevent the harbor. Had a skinny entrance and very deep harbor. This is where, that's the advantage that the Spaniards took care of. The old city was basically this area here. That's the old city, and was so-called Old Havana. New Havana, from there on, began to grow in the 30s and 40s out to the west. Obviously, North Key West is up here about 80 some odd miles. My mother died in 1956. Again, at that point, I was 8 years old. And what sets the stage for the rest of my life, the guidance that I got, this is my old man. And this is a 1938 Ford DeSoto that when I first got out of service in 72, 73, I went back to Miami to finish my formal schooling. Simply because I was not an academia guy. I didn't ever care for academia guy, and I didn't have the best grades in the world. But the military had said, look, if you want to stay with us and get ahead, you'll get a commission. You'll get need a degree first. So I went back to Miami, and literally I fell in love with this car with the original lady that bought it back in 1938. This thing was built like a proverbial tank, and I hardly ever drove it from there. My old man took to it, and he enjoyed it more than I did. Matter of fact, when I went back in service, I left him the car, and he had it for years thereafter. The purpose of me, the Moments, Memories, and Men. The name I came up with after a number of things. It covers a span of time of 115 years, basically. And it is motivated in me. I motivate myself to write this thing because I noticed and I learned throughout the history of being with my old man and what have you, that the second time he had gone back into Cuba was to indeed, yes, get some money out to live on again, but more importantly, he risked a lot in trying to get historical papers of things that this man and his father had done. His father had indeed been, since 1902, appointed in the consular offices of the new republic, and he had represented Cuba to Venezuela and a number of countries in the Caribbean initially to help build the Panama Canal. And he was a go-between guy with the United States, this is my grandfather, to the building of the canal, specifically getting nitrates and explosives from Cuba, the manufacturer of, and taking them to the canal. And then from there, all of this is documented here. From there, it just grows into a career, a 38-year career in the diplomatic corps. And he dies in 1941 in Havana in retirement. My old man, a banker, he takes over and he did wonderful things. So the impetus is of the book, it's in three parts basically. That quick and dirty that I told you, Dad and Granddad, then myself growing up in Cuba without a mother, with a father who took me under his wing, and good heavens, you couldn't get away with the things today. You know, father taking you all over Havana, Tropicana, Sanssouci, clubs that just things. It was Paris. It was Paris of the East. So I remember that distinctly, being 8, 9, 10 years old, and going everywhere with him. Those memories of Havana are etched in me, but the third and final part of the book is basically when we come to Texas, our adopted country. This is my country, by the way. This is not a briefing for the Cuban Tourist Bureau or anything. You can give a briefing for something that doesn't exist anymore, something that is a nightmare and it just doesn't exist. What you're seeing here is history gone by. It lives only in memory. Socialism took care of this. Communism took care of this. Communism took care of the spirit of these people. But anyway, basically the third part is coming to Texas, going to college only to flunk out, and join the Navy. And by the way, I still root for the Navy against the Army every year. Let me see. Bear with me. Oh, these things always happen, don't they? So I began to write this book, and it's taken me a little longer than normal, I guess, because I guess life gets in the way, and all of these things get in the way. But it's a pleasure filtering through these notes and then filtering through my own notes that I took for the 41 years I was in service, notes that I would take, that I would do at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in a 3 or 4 canopy jungle on the back of a C ration, or the back of a Marlboro box of cigarettes, a cocktail napkin, an old match. All of these notes, whether you were imbibed or scared like hell, and you took these notes. And like the old man, he kept stuff, and so did I. So I just had a big stuff, and I began to put this thing together. And I suspect that many of us here sitting in this audience have this same fascination with history and of the memories that we all share. I mean, for me, it's a fascination that it's a feeling of having belonged, having done something, of having been relevant, and certainly having good memories. Nothing else may exist, but those memories, and those memories, in my opinion, can, unlike dried foods that you add water and you reconstitute it, memories to me can only be preserved by the spoken, certainly the written word. And that's what I've done. That's what I've done. That is a quick and dirty, real quick, of how we get here, which is the invitation of Stuart to, listen, just come and talk to us about the, some of your memories. It's impossible to do in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I can tell you that. So I've just taken a few, and if time permits, I can talk a little longer if you wish, but I have several ones in which I have bullet points of here. And one of the first ones that comes to mind, 3rd grade, I went to Jesuit school. And 3rd grade, we had Jesuit professors, all male. It was all male, all boys school, a little uniform. And Mr. Garcia was our 3rd grade teacher. Short guy, pencil mustache like Errol Flynn. And you did not cross Mr. Garcia. He taught biology, botany, agronomy, and Spanish grammar. If I speak fluent grammar, if I speak fluent Spanish and my grammar is excellent, I owe it to this individual. Literally a hands-on kind of guy. If you didn't learn, he put his hands on you hard. Mr. Garcia's school, room at the school, was he taught biology as well to us. Mind you, this is 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. And Garcia, you just didn't cross him. Garcia had been a regular soldier in Spanish Sahara, specifically in the colony of Ifni, from 1934 to 1936, thereabouts. His commanding officer was a fellow by the name of Francisco Franco. And when the war in Spain begins, he follows Franco to Spain. The entire garrison went. Garcia fought with Franco for 3 years. And volunteered, was not accepted, to later go fight with the Blue Division, which was a Spanish volunteer division, to go fight in Russia under the German banner. He did not make that. That was one of his disappointments in life. He told you this. So you get an early feeling on your 3rd or 4th grade of who's teaching you, and you are terrified of the guy, but you are so respectful. This guy knows everything. But if you crossed him in the corner of his room, he would send you to sit down underneath a boa constrictor, which was stuffed. It was like a tree at the corner, and the boa constrictor would look at you. To this day, I'm terrified of snakes because I spent some time in that chair. That's one. Don't know what happened to Mr. Garcia. God rest his soul, I'm sure. There's several. Good heavens, there's so many of them. The departure from Havana. The departure from Havana, 22 November 1959. Again, you don't know anything because your old man hasn't told you anything. You have no business to know any of this thing. But again, my old man had a background that may be questionable in the sense of doing certain things. He had been a banker, and I remember distinctly as I am standing here, this same flask had been stuffed. The Cuban currency was the same as the American currency. A 20 peso was 20 American dollars. 1,000 pesos was 1,000 American dollars. He was a banker, and when the revolution took place, when they marched into Havana 1 January 1959, he began to experiment. We haven't broken the seal yet on this, but if anyone wants to stay around, we can do this. He experimented specifically with yellow Bacardi and dunking $100,000 bills, $500 bills, to see if the ink would run. Obviously it didn't. To this day, I remember my old man at the airport, the militia guys, going up to the militia guys and saying, have one with me for the revolution. No, we can't do that. We're on duty. These were the bearded guys, the militia that guarded the airport at the time. You could still leave Cuba at the time on a tourist visa. But this was it. We didn't know anything. I didn't know anything of what was going on. In this German Rolleicord camera, you open it up. He was a photography guy. You open it up. He had stripped the film out, and in lieu of the film, here comes the high dollar bills again. And you roll it, and then you put the things on there, the film over the bills. And I remember many of the militia guys were guys that had never seen electricity. They had no idea what a camera was. And the old man, again, was kind of enticing. Let me take your picture. I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you. They've never seen a picture of themselves. Swear to God. Well, that's all nice and cool. When we leave Havana, this is very iconic, and I bought this years ago. It sits in our house. But this particular picture is much of what I remember of the moment that we left Cuba. Looking out a window, seeing Havana go out underneath you, and just having an odd feeling that, something is just not right here. But we landed in Key West, Miami, we went to West Palm. We went to swim. It was a cold afternoon. We went to swim, came back in, and the old man is laying in bed, not passed out, but with a pair of women's tweezers. And in the motel room, you guys would have a field day with the old man. He had the lamps. He had like cords going for the lamps, and there were bills all over that motel. It smelled like alcohol. There were bills everywhere. We lived on that. He was a banker, but like any profession, physicians, attorneys, bankers, he at that point was 51 years old. He didn't want to go back to school or anything, so he came to America, and we didn't lose a lick. He started pumping gasoline at an Esso station, filling station, and laying brick. He laid brick. He did speak languages, and he ended up with DuPont, working for DuPont in Texas in 1963. So there was about 3 years in which he did what he did, and hell, we didn't miss a damn thing. We didn't miss it. It's funny how that happened, you know what I mean? And Cuba had the largest, most prosperous, fastest growing middle class in the Western Hemisphere. It was growing rapidly, per se, than that of the United States. And what happened in Cuba, in many ways, is a shame because people had it so good that you said, it can't happen here. Those clowns up in the mountains, that's communism. They'll never be able to take it. We've got it too good here. We got prosperity. And this is a good time to go into some of these photographs. This is an aerial view of Havana. Population of Havana at the time was about 800,000. Probably still that today, maybe less. Again, north is over here. Morro Castle is over here. These are old postcards that you guys did. And again, basically, the newer Havana looking towards the older Havana. The castle, Moore Castle. Close to 19,000 people were murdered here in 1959, early 1960 by Castro's henchmen. That was the beginning of it beginning to unravel.
Did you say 19,000?
19,799, correct. Those are the ones that are known, and that's only there, like Aña. The American Embassy then, and the American Embassy now again. In the years in between, it was administered by the Swiss charge d'affaires. Hotel Nacional, this is the big national hotel. This is the only structure in Havana that, up to this point, owned by the Army, run by the Army for the purpose of getting hard currency. Everything happens in this hotel. The prostitution that says what they said, that the communists said was so decadent, is rampant here. The gambling that was so decadent that the communists said had to go, is rampant here. This is the only place in Havana that these things go on. All administered by the Army. Right here. Same hotel. Huh?
Can you get drafted?
Say, I didn't hear you.
Can you get drafted?
Oh, they'll draft you. Oh, they'll draft you. These are some of the showgirls in Tropicana. The old man liked pictures. This is an iconic one. The bank, the old man's bank was here. There's a photograph here that he took years ago from the bank, and the bank looked out on these promenades. The Capitol, it was patterned after the American Capitol building, finished in 1933. It was shorter in height and less in width than the one in Washington, but it still had a bicameral pattern after the bicameral system in Washington. Same Capitol. I remember walking up here as a kid, and when you walked in here, there was a statue, a tall statue, like 2-3 stories high, of a woman in gold, and she had the spear, and it was the Republic, the statue of the Republic. I remember that. That would always impress me, the size of that thing. Statue to the Maine, the battleship Maine. Some of the battleship's weapons were that had been salvaged from the bottom of Havana Harbor, and the eagle to commemorate that. The very first thing that Castro did when he took over, the Yankee imperialist dogs, he blasted this out of here, and he blasted these guns out of here. So that went away. Morro Castle is here. Old Havana is here. Newer Havana is here. The iconic Malecon is right in through here. Ship going out. God, I have so many, I could talk here for another memory that I have, and I can, was learning how to swim. In an island, you learn to swim early. There's different ways how you do this. So when he and Terry put this one together, and I said, yeah, all right, I learned to swim and something like that. Well, these two guys are my uncles, brothers to my sister, brothers to my mother. He also passed away of cancer, and so did he years later here in exile, both of them. Well, both of these guys, Colorado School of Mines, School of Hard Knocks, had been successful guys, working by the sweat of their brow. They're working construction. One drove a bulldozer, the one that Colorado School of Mines, he went back to Cuba and started driving a bulldozer, broke the heart of his old man. I spent that much money to send you to Colorado School of Mines, and you come back here and you drive a bulldozer. but they made money in construction, these two. And they had, after the American War, the Second World War, these guys bought a victory ship, a World War II victory ship, American surplus. And in that ship, they had installed a couple of 2-3 cranes, and you'd go out in the Gulf and you pick up sand and put them into the holes. The EPA and everybody else would have crazy. They would go berserk over this today, but that's how they did that. I would spend my summers with either these two guys riding around in their big trucks or literally a week in their boat. Well, they weren't in the boat. The boat was just run by the crew who knew these guys like brothers. They had been together like brothers from early on, played baseball. My mother was quite the baseball player back in the day. As prim and proper as she looks here, she could throw a pretty mean hardball. So everybody had played ball back in the day, and so now the crew had all grown together, was part of who operated the ship on a daily basis. So when I would go out on the ship and spend 3, 4, 5 days, I'd be eating with them, sleeping with them, and hell, I wasn't 8, 9 years old, 10 years old, and loving it. Well, one good day, they would always put the dinghy down, and there'd be 2, 3 guys with a dinghy and rifles in the dinghy for sharks, in case, because sometimes the guys wanted to go swimming. So, well, they said, well, Pascualito here, he needs to learn how to swim. So they grabbed me. I remember I was kind of scared, but no, you'd be fine. You know, you'd be out there in the dinghy, and they just threw me over the side. It was forever coming down the side of that ship, and I could tread water. But boy, I tell you what, I could really tread water from there on out really well. And all these guys, that's exactly the, you know, everybody had a grin on their face, and I was in good hands. Today, my old man would be sent to rehabilitation school and one of the things that we did. In school, at the Jesuits, we had kids of privilege and kids of not privilege, in the middle, in the between guys. But the guys of privilege, Batista's boy, Fulgencito, was one of the guys in my gang. He would throw a green nut really well. We're a bunch of ruffians, but the kids of privilege, they all had bodyguards, and the bodyguards would come to class. And they'd sit back in the back. And they'd have 45s or 38s. And it was really cool going to recess because these guys would go out there with you. And you'd always say, can I see that pistol? And the guy would pull the pistol out and show you the pistol. These are things that, again, you just say, this is how you grew up with. Nobody ever got shot. You knew what a 38 and 45 was when you were 10 years old. And these guys were cool. What's the next one? I forget. That's when it all ends. You know, the evolutions, the memories that I have of Havana, I could talk here for, I got bullet points, just a few of the many in which I put together in this publication. You know, the memories of those moments of me walking with the old man, walking with these two, with our crew in Havana, no doubt begin to shape the conscience and the conscious development of an individual. I have absolutely no regrets of what I have seen, I have done in those years, or certainly since, in service to this great nation. But you began to notice at an early age that what the eyes, the lenses of the eyes saw, and the ears heard, nose smelled, and the senses sensed, that there were succinct differences in the world. That a Buick torpedo literally huge Buick, my old man always liked Buicks, was distinctly different, although built similarly to a Sherman tank. And I knew what a Sherman tank was. It's another memory. Tank columns would stop off at our house on their way to do battle, and I'd run out there with a water hose to wash the tanks out, and I thought that was so cool. The tranquility of the day, and the peace and the harmony and the laughter and the happiness of Havana during the day, especially in late 58, early 59, was totally different than the rest of the evenings. You could see it, you could sense it. Soldiers were professional, and the guerrillas were not. Abject poverty was there, or it wasn't. I mean, it was there or it wasn't. And as a young fella, I couldn't determine how or why yet, but in far apart from the ruffians that I hung around with, unclean, dirty, sweaty, I found women intriguing early on. and you know, girls were certainly appreciably different. And that was, again, these are some of the changes that you noticed. Anyway, look, I can throw this, all of this changed, by the way, when these two come in here. This is a story in and of itself. This is Castro himself. I met him as well, Che Guevara, killed in Bolivia in 1967 by 7th Special Forces Group, South America. When they came into our garage, our physical garage, we had a train set, and the train set would come down from the roof. The old man had built cement things, and I was there playing mid to late 1959. The revolution was still a humanist and a peace-loving and just as fun-filled revolution. And these two guys were, with their small platoons, were making the rounds in the different neighborhoods to shake hands and say what great people they were. Well, I was playing with my electric train, and the guys that followed these two into the garage and molded themselves around the table were people who had no idea what electricity was, who had fought with them in the mountains and had been promised the world, most of them to only face a firing squad later when they didn't get it. This guy in particular sat, the transformer sat here, he was right here looking at me. Castro was 2 or 3 down from him. I did not know who they were. I knew that they were all barbudas, bearded ones. It was not but for Tomas, who was their long guy. Tomas would come, and another lady that when I let them play with the train, and they were mesmerized, they had no money. They paid me with bullets, and I was thrilled about that. When I finished playing, letting them play with the trains, Tomas said something somewhat curt to Guevara. Guevara was probably one of the most sanguine guys that existed, this guy. He was known as the butcher. If he didn't kill you, he was a doctor by trade. And he came out when the firing squads were in full bloom, he said, instead of wasting so many bullets, just put a 45 right behind him and do away with one bullet instead of wasting all these bullets on an individual. And there are pictures of him doing that. Anyway, Tomas had said some curt words to him, and that's when we found out who these two guys were. My old man tried to get Tomas out of Cuba in the ensuing years. Tomas ended up in the firing squad himself. Yes. But that's who these two guys are. And but anyway, look, I'm gonna quit here. I mean, I'll gladly ask questions if you need to. I know at some moment I gotta go and ditty. And
When is your book? Is your book out? Is it published? Is it
no. I owe. There's no excuse that it's out yet. I'm about 80 to 90% finished on it. I'm talking to a publishing attorney, a friend of Sharon's, from high school. She works for one of the publishing attorneys up in Ohio. And it's going under review, that which I have sent to her so far. and she has tailored me on certain names. If it's a public name, you can mention it, but if it's, you know, Alan Tooze, I knew this guy, we used to go swimming together. Yeah, Alan Tooze is gonna sue me. So you gotta do away with certain things. So it's being polished, but the reviews I've gotten have been, don't stop, do not leave this. So, no,
We can't wait.
well,
Yeah.
Did you have,
yeah.
Do you have time to tell a quick version of the Noriega story and his compound?
Pineapple Face he just went back to, he just went back to, 3 or 4 days ago, as a matter of fact. I talked to some of my buddies down in Miami. He just went back to, Panama. He's been freed on humanitarian reasons, and, he's living with his daughter in a ritzy area of, Panama City, Coco Sol, and that's where he's at. When we were in Panama, Mr. Noriega and his henchmen were really nasty people, really nasty people. But he finally took refuge, I believe it was in the Vatican embassy. And the Vatican said, well, we just can't, you know, this is a sanctuary city. So, okay, fine. So our PSYOP guys said, fine. So they started playing Led Zeppelin, Iron Maiden, Iron Butterfly, 24/7 through speakers all around the entire embassy for days, to the point that the bishop came out and said, look, I can't take this anymore. Surrender. And he took it. So Mr. Noriega was escorted to Homestead Air Force Base. Homestead Air Force Base. At that point, Homestead Air Force Base was coming back together after the hurricane. And ironically, he was, because we were stationed at times out of Homestead, as we were closing Panama, bringing it to Miami, we ourselves were either stationed in Homestead, our particular group was stationed either in Homestead or Key West. Great assignment, Key West. And, but yeah, that's how we got him out of there.
I was thinking about the story you told me regarding his house and you being.
Oh, good heavens. It's in the book, and that's one of the ones that is in for review. But since I don't have a reply on this, it's, is that time out? No. There are several stories to that effect. Noriega had a house, and that's, he attempted to now go back to that and try and buy that. Noriega's still got money. His daughter's got a lot of money. Noriega's house in the Pacific, in the Chiriquí province, which was the interior, that's where we were at, Rio Hato, in through there. He had a beautiful house on the Pacific. And it was rumored that he had a ton of money, American money, drug money, in there. They had found it. They had found it on the Quick Quick. The American guys had found it on the Quick Quick. And the group of guys that were in the area was me and 7 or 8 other guys. And sure enough, the general, I loved him like a brother. Boy, he just put me to task every time he got a chance. He said, well, send Gogo and count the money. We can do that. The mahogany table that was a dinner table for Noriega was a table that was from here to that wall, kind of egg-shaped, beautiful table, overlooking into the Pacific. When the curtains had opened up, it was gorgeous, gorgeous. Behind you was a bookcase that was partly hidden. That money had been hidden back in there. It was close to 20 million American dollars in 20s and 50s and 100s. All drug money. Mother of God. So we're counting. And about 1 o'clock in the morning, the general calls me, hey, Gogo, how's it going? He said, is there anything you need? I said, sir, no, there's nothing we need, but look, I'm thinking about going to Brazil. Me and the boys are going to Brazil. If anything, you better send a squad of MPs over here because we need some security. He said, there's more money here than what you guys think there's in here. And sure enough, they brought the MPs in. They surrounded the house while we finished our little homework when the sun was rising. Oh, it was beautiful. You were facing the Pacific to the south. East was over here, and you could see that sun rising. And a ton of nearly 20 million American dollars.
Wow.
And you're going, what is paycheck?
You hand counted that much?
We counted that much. And it covered pretty much that table, because it was all in small denominations. No large bills. 10s, 20s, 50s, and 100s, American.
You sure none of it slipped away?
He's not gonna tell you.
It crossed our mind. It crossed our mind. Just like when you went overseas and you captured that machine gun, I'll put this in my stash box.
Nobody will miss it.
You know?
Pascual, those were Fort Bragg troops that surrounded the embassy there, I think. 'Cause there was a radio station in Fayetteville that used to broadcast, "We Talk Noriega Out of Rock."
Yes. It was that PSYOP group out of Bragg.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's when I retired in Tampa in 2005. And Sharon and I were going to come up here. We're going to buy a place up in Asheville, up in the mountains, and just chill. The same general, Call Gogo, he'd come back in. So they recruited me to come back in, and they reactivated me for another 5 years. So that's where the 41 years comes from 36 to what initially was going to be we just need you for a 1 year kind of, Fallujah was going to hell in Iraq. And they needed troops real quick, and they got a bunch of younger colonels to go do that fight. So they called me to go sit in this guy's chair at the PSYOP command there. And I was the chief of staff there. It was all right. I had always been around troops, but sitting in the chair wasn't for me. But what was I going to do? I was an old man at that point. You know, I couldn't do much else. So.
Do you have a lot of family here? Did you not have any family here once y'all came in?
No, my mother had passed away. My sister is also retired. She lives here in Clayton, keeps to herself. Very recluse to a point. And of course, Sharon and our kids. This is my second marriage. First marriage, like many of our first marriages, go to hell.
And the second, the third, it's required.
How does that happen?
Combat qualification.
Huh?
Combat training.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Combat training.
I mean, to that, one of the experiences I had repeatedly, in the 5 years I sat in this chair as the chief of staff, I'd have young kids come to me, bang, on my desk. Sir, I'm out, don't you try to romance me. He said, whether they be reservist or full-time guys. And, you know, they've been in the Army for 5 years, and they've been 6 years in Iraq. How does that work out, you know? Reservists at 1 week in a month, 2 weeks out of the year. And for the last 4 years, they've been gone from the house 3.5 years. So when these guys, and some people say, well, you know, that's insubordination. Not really. Not really. Especially if you'd been an enlisted man at one time. And these guys are losing their jobs or losing their family because we don't have a military that's ready at that point. So you pick up the reserves and you squeeze them like a rag and you send them over there. And everybody's leaving. When they come back, you say, what do you want me to sign? So you do.
Yeah.
You do. Yeah. Yeah, but the first one didn't work out. But you know what? The second one.
My second one didn't work out either. Thursday,
Let's thank Pascual.
or my
Like many of our speakers from this room, I think that it's probably worth scheduling them again just to get more.
Yeah.
I mean, I
They
know
will
that
too.
I can't imagine how you tried to pick out what to cover in 20
Oh,
or 30
there we
minutes.
go.
It's just too,
These two guys out of here.
I
but
want to know more about those service years, that's what.
yeah.
Well, that's a third
The
part.
mango
That's,
tree.
huh? See, that brings a smile to my face.
But, I mean, I don't know about you all, but just sitting here and thinking in the room about who we're surrounded with, you know, I'm just a girl from Idaho, you know, I mean, it's a pretty overwhelming and awesome thing that we've got people that knew, I mean, this was your life, and you know, I read about it. So it's just neat. So thank you for sharing some of that, and I do hope that we can reschedule you so that we can